Today's talk, you might guess from the slide, has something to do with a cat's tail. The cat, which puzzled me when I first heard about this, and it turns out that the cat is the cougar, and the cougar is the name of an antique automobile that the speaker, Elwyn Rittal, and his brother, and Elwyn's wife Judy, had purchased, treasured, eventually ended up selling it by auction. So there's a whole story here of recent family history in Woolwich and Bath too, yes. The family lived in Bath up on Washington Street. So, Elwyn, take it away.
Well, it's good to see everybody. I'm sure that you've stared at the cougar long enough so that everybody has blinked. But what I'd like to is a little bit of a forward to help you in the understanding of the cat's tail. And this forward is to further the understanding. It's important to understand that my family and I moved from Bath in 1966 to Tennessee first, on to Missouri, then to Virginia in 1977. These dates are relevant. Until retiring in 2004, we remained away from Maine for 38 years. Unfortunately, I have very little direct knowledge of my brother's activities during this period, and most of the cat's tail was reconstructed from my brother's careful record keeping. There we are. 1945, ages 4 and 6. And thank God it's not a sailor suit. I don't know exactly what the logo is on the, but there's a little logo up here, which I think represents the air services at the time. But the story does begin right here. And unfortunately, this is the only picture that I have, after all my moves, that I have with my brother shoulder to shoulder. It's sort of tragic, but that's the only one I could find. And of course, that's Eugene right there. And the handsome one over here, as you can only guess. But let's start to track the journey of this cat. Oh my God, what's the Playboy magazine got to do with this? Let's find out. Up here, it says February 1968. And down here, what do we got here? Detroit Sporty and Special Cars. It's got to have something to do with this. So I shouldn't leave you hanging right there watching this, but there's a little bit of information that needs to be put in before this, is that Gene and I both attended local schools. Gene attended the University of Maine, studied physics. He remained in our family home with the parents for many years. And that picture that I showed you, as I indicated, was the only image I have found of my brother. Growing up, it was very evident that Gene and I were different in many ways. Gene was interested in the sciences and was leader of the gang. But I just wanted to play with something with wheels on it. The older we got, Gene's passion was experimenting with printed circuits, reading scientific journals, building shortwave radios, experimenting with new technology of transistors, and starting a bold project to build a huge cement structure in Woolwich, which some of you may be aware of. But all I wanted to do was save money to buy my first car. In the early 60s, Gene and I went our separate ways. Gene dated a local girl, but never married. I married, got 2 children. All right, now let's find out, what does this have to do with this cougar's tail? Oh my God, there it is. Look what I found, and look what he found in that Playboy magazine. There it is. This is a prototype 1968 XR7 GTE. But it's very important to recognize that this is a W code engine. This is a 427 available only with an automatic transmission. Well, in Augusta Green, he liked that. He liked the write-up on it. Muscle car, a gentleman's muscle car, because Gene was approaching 30 years of age. A gentleman's muscle car, and by God, that's what I guess he was a gentleman at the time, decided that he would have a Mercury Cougar XR7. So on the hunt he went. And it's a very interesting trail that he had to go to find out how he could obtain one of these vehicles. But when he went on the search, it was hard to find a dealer locally that even knew about the GTE. If we look closely at this is a dealer up in Park Auto, doesn't show up very much, that handed him a brochure on the Mercury Cougar XR7, but no mention of a GTE, because this brochure was 1967. And this was in February, late February, March, when he was looking. Well, this particular dealer was trying to sell anything he possibly could that was available at the time. But my brother says, where is the GTE that I saw in the Playboy magazine? Well, it takes a while to get a car dealer to come over to your side. So my brother said, okay, look, I'm only interested in what this is. The Playboy magazine said this was going to be available in 1968. Well, the dealer indicated to my brother that there was a car through memo that came to them that's going to be available mid-season in about the April or May time. This is what my brother wanted. And it's very important that you recognize what he was looking for. 1968 XR7 GTE R code 428-inch Cougar jet with ram air with a 4-speed transmission. All the dealers says, you got to have a 427 W code C6 because that's the only thing made. Perseverance prevailed. I found this. This is only relevant to this monologue, I'm sorry. That I found this on the internet because I wondered what information did my brother have beyond the Playboy magazine that would tell him that there was a production availability of a 68 Mercury Cougar GTE. This was produced in early 1968 by Ford Lincoln Mercury. It does make reference to the GTE, but no reference to the 428 Cobra jet engine. Still a W code engine, 427 C6 transmission. And it was a mystery to me for a long time as to where did the information come from my brother, to my brother, about the availability mid-season around April, May, that there was going to be a 428 Cobra jet available. Well, what happened was the dealer finally decided that he better let the cat out of the bag. That he had received a memo from Lincoln Mercury saying that the 427 W code C6 would no longer be available, that it would be replaced by the 428 Cobra jet engine, and it would be available with a 4-speed. Oh boy. Well, because my brother was ecstatic because he definitely wanted 4-speed. This is an actual picture of the interior of his car. When that picture was taken, it was, the speedometer was at 54,000, but when I took it out of storage, it was at 45,000 miles. And there it is. That's the engine that my brother went through hoops for with dealers to convince them that he wanted an engine that was coupled up with a 4-speed. When they say conservatively rated at 410 horsepower, ask my wife about the rating of that engine. We won't get into that. This picture here was taken at my mother's house at 1463 Washington Street, which most people know is probably the old King's Dock. It's down in the backyard. And this is the first known picture that I found in my brother's desk of the Cougar. I would expect, because he acquired the car in July, looking at the foliage and the flowers that we see blooming here in the edge, that it probably is in the July timeframe. That's the only picture that I found of the car that was relatively, when the car was relatively new. There was one thing that you really don't probably will not notice in the pictures, but right down here on the wheels, it had a center insert that had a mercury head, and it was a plastic insert, but unfortunately never made it from Auburn to Maine to Bath, because they would occasionally pop out and they'd get run over. So this is a photograph in 1971, well, my brother and his girlfriend at the time, right here, and the dog, was up at the Wilhelm Reich Museum. My brother was a bit of a, he liked to delve into what I call weird sciences. If anybody knows my brother Eugene, that he had a personality that was very unique, and of course he had been educated as a physicist, so he had a pretty good worldview of physics and how the world operated. And that picture there again was found in his library of 35 millimeters, showing the car, and obviously he was driving it, 1971. And there's my brother, as most people might recognize him years ago. I see some heads nodding, saying that was my brother, and I expect that the car that he's leaning on is the Cougar, because there is a sort of an indicator right here on the rear window, barely visible, was a label showing Car of the Year. Brother was a weightlifter. He was bantam weightlifting. I'm not sure whether he was champion of the state of Maine, but for a man that weighed probably at that time when he was weightlifting about 123 pounds, to be able to lift twice his weight at a 5'5". I didn't mess with him much. This photograph here was a bit of a mystery for a while, but on the back of it was the date of June 3rd, 1993. I can only speculate that a gentleman in Edgecombe, Doug Kennedy, he used to run the car wash right next to Big Al's, took the picture because I started getting calls in Virginia from Doug wanting to see the car. He wanted my brother to show him the car. And I said, Doug, why don't you ask my brother? Well, he says, I can never get hold of him. Well, the problem was Gene wouldn't answer the telephone. My mother very seldom answered the telephone. And the telephone was located in that big old house in 1463 Washington Street in the most remote portion of the house. So communication was a bit of a problem. So Doug would be calling me, trying to set up a meeting. And for me to set up a meeting, I had to call the neighbors, to have the neighbors to go over and tell my mother that Wynn was calling at a certain time. Would you be in the telephone room so that you could answer the telephone? Quite a treat. This went on for quite some time, and finally, it appears that there was an opportunity to Doug see the car in 1993, and this picture was dated on the back, and you can see the garage, and that is my brother. And what happened there was the car had been in storage on Lincoln Street, and my brother was moving the car from Lincoln Street back home, and that's how Doug got involved in taking the picture. Well, once that picture was taken, that set in motion a whole series of events. Doug had seen in hot rod magazines about the GTE and how rare the car was in its 428 four-speed configuration. And that he had seen an article by the registrar of all GTEs in Snohomish, Washington, that this gentleman had, at that time, what was reported to be the only GTE in existence with a four-speed. Well, as you can imagine, Doug's anxiety and enthusiasm to call this guy and say, hey, brother, you don't have the only four-speed. I can confirm and give you the VIN number of a car in Maine that is a four-speed. Oh boy, and what did this start? This started telephone calls from Snohomish, Washington to me because nobody would answer the phone at my mother's house for the registrar to come to Maine and to confirm the legitimacy of this vehicle as being another one of only 3 produced. And of course, because the registrar had number 1, he wanted to make sure that there was no number 2, but it was sort of undeniable from the VIN number. But if you look at his registry data, he registers these cars based upon having seen them, not on speculation whatsoever. So in February of 1996, just remember, this was 1993 when this all started. My telephone rung off the hook constantly. And it was sort of aggravating. I had my own thing to do. I didn't really want to get in the middle of all this. But finally, in 1996, I brokered a deal with my brother for the registrar of all GTEs to come to Maine from Snohomish, Washington. And if anybody knows where Snohomish, Washington is, it's on the other side of the world. And it's no easy thing probably in February in 1996 to to fly and then probably go into Boston and rent a car. So the registrar was putting some obviously effort in it because he had some skin in the game. So the registrar came and saw Gene. Gene had some rules. Oh, you had to be here by noontime or I wouldn't be home. Well, yes, he would be home, but he wouldn't answer the door. And I think some of the people that know him probably see where that's coming from. But the bottom line was, the registrar looked at it, because it was in the garage and he had to sort of peel off the canvas and all that stuff to get to it. The registrar saw it, confirmed the VIN numbers on all the data. I don't know whether he crawled underneath of it. It might have been a problem in the garage. But according to him, the registrar, that Gene indicated that he had all the documents and that the car was unrestored, unmolested, all matching numbers. But there was one thing that my brother asked him to do after Gene found out that this was a rare vehicle. Was told the registrar, don't, whatever you do, put it in the registry. Now the registry numbers, and this represents the GTE registry numbers of number of Cougars produced. There were 393, and that's a revised number according to the registrar, down. There was 356 for the 427 cubic inch engine and the C6, which was the W code engine. There were 37 total with the 428 cubic inch engine, Cobra Jet, with the Ram Air. And there were only 3 with the 4-speed transmissions. And I believe the reason of the rarity is the fact that this was a mid-season change around April, May, when the 427 was dropped because of production cost and the 428 engine, FE engine, was used. It was mid-season. And that's why those brochures, handouts, didn't say anything about the 428. Because you think Lincoln Mercury would spend a whole bunch of money in printing brochures for something that was only going to be end of season in a few more months? So most of the information of the 428 with a 4-speed came from dealers' memos. And this particular dealer in Park Auto Mart in Auburn was a car nut. He read the memos. And he was the one that told my brother, hang on, Gene. There's going to be a mid-season change. Because don't forget, this is February when he was looking. There's going to be a mid-season change in April, May. And your dream car that you want with a 4-speed is going to be available. And that's why I believe that the production of these cars was so low. Dealers wanted to get rid of their 68 inventory, any GTs that they had, or any GTEs that they might have had with the W code engine. So that's, I believe, that's my opinion as to why this car ended up being so rare. This is the last photo taken of my brother at Washington Street. You can see from the earlier photos that he had, he's like most of us. Mother Nature's caught up with a few of us. Gene still, and I almost see that as a smile. Gene, if you knew Gene, he wasn't a great one to do a lot of smiling. But I just can't help but think, but right there, there's a slight smile on his face. God bless him. Of course, after that photograph was taken in September of 2002, my brother passed away from respiratory complications. Even while he was in the hospital, and I tried to talk to him about the car. He was very reluctant to talk about it. I tried to get an idea from him. What if? What if, Gene? What would you like to have done with the car? And I could never get a what if. Love to have had a what if. It might have changed the direction that I went in this car. But he passed away, and 2002 September, I removed the car from my mother's house, took it to another storage facility, and this is up on the furthest end of High Street, along past the dump at Pete Kelly's garage. I had to get it stored somewhere, and it was just barely running. I got it running, had to rebuild the carburetor and had to put some used tires on it, and got it up to Pete's place and covered up with tarp, preserved it, and it remained up there until 2005. Now, it looks like the same lot, but this is its homecoming. This is when it came to 301 Dana Mill Road. I had a house built, and I built a beneath the house garage just for that automobile. Fireproofed the garage, heated. When I say air conditioned, dehumidified it. Because once I had a chance to sit behind the wheel, hey, this is fun. This is quite a rig. And I told Judy, I said, look, let's sort of do a 10-year plan. Let's hang on to this car for at least 10 years and then evaluate our situation after 10 years. So we agreed to agree. I mean, both of us, we was on the same wavelength that we would not restore this car, but we would bring it back to a safe driving, which means brake lines, brakes. A lot of the items that I took off probably didn't need to be taken off, but I just wanted to have that feeling when I got in the car with my wife and we went on cruises and went on shows, that we wouldn't be alongside the road calling for a Jerridan. So we set up a 10-year plan. And you can see this is July of 2005. The Cougar, this is my Cougar, Gene's Cougar right here. And this, by the way, is the other known to exist 4-speed, residing in Billings, Montana. It was sold about the time my brother passed away. It was sold privately by the registrar of all GTEs to a gentleman in Billings, and undisclosed but rumored to be sold in the $35,000 to $40,000 range. That car had 47,000 miles on it in 2001. In 2002, this one had 45,000 miles on it. They were slightly different, as you can see. One had a vinyl roof. It had been rumored to be a car that a gentleman bought in Michigan. I cannot confirm that completely, but it had been rumored, and you know how rumors work, that the car was bought as a drag car. It had a rear end put in it that was a locking rear end instead of a translock rear end. And you don't generally put a true locking rear end in a car that if you're going to drive it on the street. This rear end in Gene's car was a 391 track lock. It was bad enough. Cruising at 60 miles an hour, it was running 3,200 RPMs. If you look at your tachometer when you go home tonight, you're lucky to get over 1,500 RPMs out of it. When we went into our 10-year plan, these are the things that I removed from the Cougar. I removed them, packaged them, labeled them, and the reason is that in the 10-year plan that Judy and I had talked about, that someday someone else would own this Cougar. So that someone else might want to restore it back to its original. And what those parts represent is parts that I took off, most of them functioning, but could put me alongside the road, wasn't up to that. That whoever got the car could take these parts and bring that car back to, I'm not going to say 99.9, that's ivory soap, but I will say probably at least to 95% original, those parts would bring that car back. And obviously they went with the car when she was sold. Some of the meets that we went to, the first time on the East Coast ever, this was shown alongside of this vehicle right here, which is an XR7 GTE 427 C6 W code, a very good friend of mine down in Connecticut. In fact, well, I may be getting ahead of myself. He was in the audience at the auction with a paddle. This is one of the fall foliage that we took back in 2009. It just seemed to be pretty, it's prettier on the original sheet with less pixels. But she's not a bad looking old cat. And she was a pretty good driver at 11 miles a gallon. No, boy, here we are. Old Handsome himself. And that's not a beer cup that I'm holding. We just happened to be at Owl's Head one day, and we won an award with a car, and along with the fanfare, I got a coffee cup with the Cougar's image on it. And boy, I tell you, I really cherish that. Of course, along with my lovely bride alongside of me there. Some of the awards that we really cherish was that one, me holding the coffee cup. And you can see, here we go, that's a 9 there, by the way. It looks like somebody was having a little problem with digits. But it was at the Fabulous 50s Sensational 60s car meet. And they normally don't award certificates, but at that particular time, they just thought that would be a fun thing to do. And another place that we really enjoyed, because it was a great benefit to the foundation here for the Maine Deaf and Hard of Hearing children, we went there a number of times and have several muscle car second place. And don't forget, folks, this was a car with blemishes, unrestored, sitting right beside automobiles that people were so proud of them that they erected tents over them and had their children keeping the dust off them. So we was there as just representing ourselves, representing the fact that we enjoy going to some of these shows that are especially shows that benefit various organizations. And here we are. If you look at the date down below, that this is up at the Owl's Head auction. She's in the hangar with a Owl's Head plate over my Maine 1968 plate. But this is the beginning of it. Judy and I, and this was the week of the viewing of the car. The car would be put at night in the museum, and behind it is a biplane, a 1918 biplane, J1, which was green. And it was very fortuitous. If you notice, they almost blend in together. And it was quite a thrill, frankly, to go to the museum and see Gene's car along with these exhibits. I mean, what more could you ask for? It's in the museum. It's alongside of a 1918 Johnson J1. Pretty proud moment, as you can tell from my wife's appearance. And again, that shows the aircraft biplane, and I think they call it a Johnson J1. It originally had an iso-spanso engine, Sousa, whatever, 100 horsepower, and it's been repowered to 150 horsepower, imagine. And actually, they fly that thing. But I tell you something else. I've flown this thing right here. As my wife is nodding. All right. There she is on the auction block. That was quite a moment. Whew. Excuse me. It was about midday, maybe around 3 o'clock maybe, when the car drove up, and I told the director of the museum when I delivered the car to him 1st of July that would be the last I set or drove the car, that it would all be handled by them. And in the car is the director of the Transportation Museum, Russ Rotnack, which had no problem of wanting to drive it across the auction block. If anybody was at the auction, you remember when he drove it up on the auction block, he revved the engine a couple of times, and that cat roared. I mean, roared. Oh, Lord. Yes, that was fun. And these were the 3 top sellers that day. It was Gene's Cougar, a 1960 GT 500, fully restored to the hilt. And I need to come forward here a little bit and to get my memory might not serve me as to what that sold for. Okay, back on track. Beautifully restored. Only issue that it did not have a original engine. It had a matching period engine, which is very acceptable in today's classic cars. That GT 500 sold for $125,000, and an all-in price, which means all-in means that the 10% buyer's commission, for $137,500. And hey, folks, I'm pretty proud that I'm up there and that Mustang is down there. Just kidding, folks. I love my Mustangs. Sound like Donald Trump now. The third seller was a Pierce Arrow 1242 sedan, sold for $105,000, an all-in price of $115,500. Those were the 3 top sellers at the August 22nd, 2015 Owl's Head auction. It has been indicated by Hemmings that the Cougar set an all-time world record of a GTE sale. I take that on its merits, but I can't stand up here and crow to the point that it was or is, but it has been indicated that it's an all-time. And also, Owl's Head indicated that it most likely was a all-time high for a vehicle sold at auction at Owl's Head. Just pretty proud of the fact that it made unofficially those records. Here she is after the sale. She's got a sold sign up there, and she's sitting alongside of other cars that sold at the auction. And she sat there for, gosh, a good week and a half, almost 2 weeks before the owner came get it. Ooh, watch out for that. Yes, it was hard. Oof, get by that. Okay, the final goodbye. This was a picture was sent to me at the by Owl's Head when the vehicle came to get it. Now, the buyer wanted to remain anonymous. There was actually 3 buyers. One in the audience, which I found out to be my friend out of Connecticut. Didn't expect him to bid on it, but he did. But he got the ball rolling, and he bid it up to $124,000. And then the phone bidder and the anonymous bidder, which pre-sent in his bid value, went at it. Oh my God. It was an excedrin headache for me because they went at it like they had more money than good sense. But when it hit 200,000, Judy had some tears. But whew, it went like a Chinese ping pong game. If you've ever seen a Chinese ping pong game, you barely know who is ahead because the ball's in motion. 207 was the gentleman in San Diego that that was on the phone. And then the absentee bidder had resources that put him with a hammer down, which is the gavel, down at $208,000. He had to pony up, cost $228,800 plus shipping fees to get it home. So he's got a lot of money tied up in a Mercury Cougar. But I guess if you're into Mercury Cougars, old classic, low production cars, what do? You break the piggy bank. You spend money. He did. Now, people will ask, when you have an automobile that is a collector car, it's got to be designated a collector car. You can have an antique car, and you could sell an old car and pay 15% capital gain. But when that car falls under this category, right there, guess what Uncle Sam wants? 28% of the sale value of that car. So, what gives you collector car value? Obviously, somebody wanted a Cougar. Desirability. I got that at the top of the list. Pedigree and provenance. There's a lot of information on this car that my brother saved. Condition. Original features. Here we go. Production numbers. Photographs and number matching. Number matching now is accepted as being engine, transmission, and differential match. if you go back a few years, number matching might represent every single production number on the car, but if the car has been driven any length of time, there may not be, the distributor might not be the exact production number, but numbers matching does make a big difference. And of course, Gene's car was a numbers matching. And in the boxes would bring it back to that percentage of number matching car. And that's what people look for when they're willing to spend close to $250,000 for an automobile. This is, you probably won't be able to read it very well, but when I was restoring the car, bad word, not restoring, working on the car to bring it back to drivability and cleaning it up, this document right here was found under the spare tire, under the mat on the spare tire, which is a build sheet. Very important to the provenance and documentation of a car. And the reason it's soiled is because it was in an area that got damp and moisture over the years. This is another sheet that was found under the mat, the carpet at the kick plate. And this, again, is a build sheet. One is for the mechanics of the car, and the other one would be for the interior of the car. This is another valuable document. And if you'll notice something about this document, you may notice right up there that it said automatic. Because when Gene first went to the dealer, that's all that was available until the dealer let the cat out of the bag. That's my brother's signature right there. And his trade-in. He traded in a 1965 SS Camaro. But the dealer said, look, Gene, get on the books, because when he let the cat out of the bag, that in mid-season, there would be a 4-speed available. Ha-ha, here we are. What do we say right up there in the corner? 4-speed. So that's a dream made true right there. And to have those documents and the provenance, of which I'm only relating a small amount of the provenance to you at this meeting, to have those documents right there represent anywhere between 10 to 40% of the value of that automobile. So if you've got an old collector car and you don't have the provenance on it, then the buyers will look at that as being, if you don't have the provenance, that car doesn't come up to the value that the provenance would add to the value of that car. So the secret is don't throw anything away. Well, that's hard for a Mainer to do, right? Again, this is the owner's card, which you probably remember when you went to the dealers. You got an owner's card. If you had warranty work, they would run it through like a credit card machine to verify the warranty on it. And since Judy and I have had the car, there's been a number of articles written on it. Muscle Car Review in 2013, they saw the car at Owl's Head and wanted to write an article on it. Hot Rod Magazine wrote an article, and that's on the internet. Legendary Cougar Magazine, that's a recent one when the car was being advertised for sale. Barn Finds internet sites, Hemmings internet sites, and of course the Portland Press Herald run that several pictures of it. That's the Muscle Car Review catalog, and I think that's the 2013. And then this is the Legendary Cougar Magazine that ran And boy, I tell you, these people are strictly by the book. You don't deviate by anything that you may say about the car. It's got to be 100%. Otherwise than that, you get told. This was the auction catalog that was put out by Owl's Head when the car went into the auction. And this was the information that was put forth in the auction catalog, showing obviously the key thing is this right here, the 4-speed. And then, of course, the 428 Ram Air. And basically the Ram Air was a active system where the right at the top of the car there was like a vent opening, and that would ram the air into the engine. When you drop manifold vacuum, as it is right now, you notice that is open, showing the blue lid down below. That will ram air into the carburetor, which, according to the experts, say it gives some little more grunt to it. I had plenty of grunt, I'll guarantee you that. Okay. The most controversial item. Here it is, folks. Would you believe? That's my hand pointing, sort of pointing at two things. That didn't create a controversy because the other one of known Cougar had that decal put on it, because when the registrar would show his car, people didn't understand what 7-liter meant. So he put that on, and I figured, by God, if he can put it on, I can put it on, because I had the same problem. They was always calling it a 390 or a 302 or whatever. So that actually is a decal that would have gone on to a 69. Okay. No big foul. But the big thing was the color of that right there. Would you believe that just that, because it was black, caused the biggest controversy amongst several very high-profile Cougar, not only owners, but they also sell components for Cougars. And the emails flew that should be blue, not black. Oh my God. Give me a break. I found it black. I left it black. It is black, and thank God along came several people, others, that had Ram Airs that had black air cleaners. So I feel exonerated, but I feel that that's the way I found it. I found it with all the dirt and crap on it when my brother stored it, that it was blue, and I hope it stays blue. But can you believe it? Of all the things to criticize, and the reason they say it's blue is because they saw one that was blue. And I found out later also that because during production, they grabbed a cap that was available. But the listings show it to be black. Ha ha! Beat them on that. Whoops. Does that mean that ended? I guess it did.
That's it.
My God, the lights went out. Thought I died.